What's going on? It's Phil from Pitbull Exposed. Today's episode, I have a very special guest who goes by the name of Simon Chang. He's a powerlifter, second place in the IPF. He's 23 years old, and he's just a very, very strong guy overall. I'm super happy and super fortunate to have him on the channel today. So, how are you doing today, man?
Good man. No, really. Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it. I looked through your channel. I love all the stuff on there. So it's an honor to be on it.
Yeah, I'm happy. I'm happy Carlos told me about you. Look through your Instagram, and I'm super impressed by your lifts. And I don't really care like who's drug free or not, but like the fact that like the drug free aspect, like to see such a strong drug free lifter hitting those kinds of lifts, it's like it's
Yeah.
very inspirational.
Yeah.
So
Thanks.
it's gonna be a blitz Q&A. We're just gonna be talking about maybe 8 questions per big lift, and yeah, so let's jump into it. So why don't you tell the viewers what your current lifts are? Like you could tell us in the gym, tell us in the meet, so we can get an idea.
Okay. So my best lifts in world or so my last meet IPF Worlds, which was last week, I did a 563 squat, 563 pounds, um, 391 bench press, and it goes by kilos. That's why the conversions are kind of weird. And
Hmm.
then a 633 pound deadlift. Those are for deadlift and squat. Those are actually my best lifts like I've ever done. But for bench, I've hit 405 in the gym.
Crazy.
Yeah,
And you say you're 23 years old,
yeah,
5'8".
yeah. Like 5'8",
Nice.
5'8" and a half.
Now, do you think genetically speaking, like you think you have very good genetics to be a powerlifter?
I think genetics do play a role, but you can't focus on that too much. Like for me, I think it's such a small role. It's just the fact like I've been lifting for so long. Like I've been lifting since I was 13 years old, and the
Hmm.
fact that I got into it at that age, like the first time I lifted, I couldn't even bench press the bar. So you can say I had no genetics if I just started from there, like really bad genetics. But I just stuck with it, and I literally for those from about 13 to 16, I worked out every single day because my dad owned a gym. Even Christmas Day, I would go in on Christmas, New Year's
Hmm.
Eve, whatever. Like I just love the gym, and I feel like that gave me a really good base.
Well, after growing older and just knowing how your body works, and just being in the
Mm.
gym for like a decade, do you think like what lifts you think you could really excel at? Like, what's your specialty? What's a lift that, like, for example, like your squat or something?
They actually mentioned in the worlds, I have like all my lifts are very very well rounded. Like usually you see people like they have one really like a massive deadlift or a massive squat, and then kind of lower other numbers. All my numbers were basically in the top. Like I'm very well rounded. There's no number that kind of like stands out. So
Overshadows, yeah.
yeah, I guess you could say like maybe bench overshadows a little bit, but my other lifts are catching up to that.
Okay.
But yeah, I would say I'm fairly well rounded in regards to lifting.
Okay, so let's get into the squat now.
Mhm.
So let's talk about lat tightness in the squat. So you talk to like 10 different coaches, everybody's giving you different tips. Some people are saying, really get those elbows under. Some guys are
Yeah,
saying try to rip the bar apart. You got all kinds of cues. What do you like to think about when really trying to engage your lats in the squat?
similar to the elbows down. Like I think elbows vertical as possible, and like bringing your lats down almost like a lat pull down. Because when your elbows are more vertical, you're gonna stay more upright. Like imagine just if my elbows are up right now, you can see I'm just rounding forward
Hmm.
automatically, right? My body's rounding forward. So that's going to cause you to tip forward. So keeping your elbows vertical as possible, your body's going to be vertical. You're not going to tip forward. And then also, like you said, ripping the bar down, keeping a nice lat pull down. That's just going to keep everything your back tight. You want total body tightness for this main compound lift. Just for bench press and deadlift, it's the same thing. You want like total body tightness.
Hmm. Okay. What's your best tip to avoid the good morning squat? When they squat down and they really like,
Hmm.
yeah.
I think even with that, the thing I noticed with that more is when your elbows, similar to what I was saying, when your elbows aren't vertical and when they shoot out, you're gonna naturally lean forward and your upper back's gonna collapse, and also proper bracing. So if you're not keeping your core tight and you keep your core loose, automatically, whenever I see guys, they don't get a good belly breath, what I call. Whenever they go down, they don't have a good belly breath. Their core's not tight. Their hips shoot out and they go forward. That's what I've noticed a lot. Usually, I think the thing that's most common with good morning is usually the belly breath, and then after that, it's the tipping forward from having your elbows flare forward, not keeping upper back tightness. But it's mostly through the upper body, I find.
Okay, so it's okay, because the lack of lat tightness causes the
Yeah,
chest to cave in and everything. It
like
just
yeah, exactly. If your back's not tight, your whole upper body's going to cave and your hips are going to shoot back.
mhm. Okay. I know it varies from person to person, but let's say for you, what's your low bar compared to like your high bar?
So my high bar actually used to be a little bit more than my low bar, and then I switched to low bar and I just found it more comfortable. But I would say in comparison right now, my low bar has gotten a lot better. So it's probably about 45 pounds more, which is not a crazy amount. Like I've seen people where it's almost 100 pounds more. But I've done a lot of high bar just through playing football. So I would say I'm fairly good at that. And then I got better at low bar over time.
Hmm. So it's like a 45-pound difference for you right now.
Yeah, it's not crazy. Like I've seen guys with way more difference. They can barely even squat high bar. But I've been doing high bar for almost 10 years. So
Okay, interesting. Okay, so what's a good technique cue for someone who's very weak in the hole?
weak in the hole, I think really good bracing. Because if you want to be tight through the whole way, because a lot of times what I see if they're weak in the hole, they're kind of like dive bombing. They're going really fast descent, and they're not staying tight. So as soon as they come out of the hole, they're loose. And if you have 500 pounds on your back and you're loose, you're not tight, you're just going to get crushed. And usually it's like a hit or miss. Like when I see guys dive bombing, so meaning like they're going down really fast, they either come up really fast or they don't come up at all.
Hmm.
So, I mean, I think staying really tight, having a really good breath, holding your breath, like squeezing your abs, pushing it against the belt if you're wearing a belt, keeping the lats tight, driving out your knees, just total body tightness is what I see. It's what you need to be confident out of the hole.
Okay.
Mm.
What else? What? Let's talk decompression tips. So obviously, you're with the weights that you're squatting. I'm sure like your spine does feel like a bit compressed at times. You feel a bit beat up.
Mhm.
What are some methods that you use to like some lifters will do the lat pull down. Some guys hang off a pull-up bar. You got
Mhm.
like the Donnie Thompson method where he has a thick band. He's like kind of on the floor hanging off that.
Yeah, I've seen that.
What
I've
what is
done.
Yeah, what do you use to like help improve your recovery and just
So I do. I actually like Donnie Thompson a lot. So I do the band distraction where he's below and the band's coming from up, and it's kind of like pulling you. I don't know if you've seen the video. It's kind of hard to explain.
Mhm.
That's really good for your back. And in general, the hanging. I can't remember what those chairs are called when your legs are up.
Yeah, the inverted space
Yeah,
boots.
yeah, they're like inverted chairs or something like that. Or you can like have your feet hanging from a pull-up bar. I think those are really good. Hanging for that for like 90 seconds, 2 minutes, or even longer if you can. And then also Donnie Thompson has this thing called the ex-wife. It's like a huge 120-pound roll, and if you roll it on your back, like you'll just hear tons of crack, and it's an awesome relief
Oh,
for that.
okay, okay.
Yeah,
I think I saw Chris Duffin with that.
yeah. So I actually have one here at the gym. It's like a 130-pound roller, and it's called body tempering, and you can roll it on your back and just cracks your back and releases it, gets all the tightness out, and you just feel amazing after.
So
I've trained people and I've done it on people, and they've said it's better than an hour chiropractor session, and it takes maybe a minute to do. You roll it on their back and forth 2 times.
sounds like a foam roller on steroids.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh,
No,
okay.
that's really good.
Nah, it looks like a solid tool, but like for lifters who are really pushing it.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's talk about the box squat.
Mhm.
there's certain lifters who they box squat. No, yeah, the box jump. There's certain lifters who do box jumps and they jump on top of a box,
Mhm.
and they get like they talk about how they get great carryover to the squat. And there's other lifters who tend to do it and they say it does nothing.
So jump or the box squat?
The box jump, yeah.
Okay.
What's your take on that? Like, who do you think tends to benefit like off this
So I
explosive
think
exercise?
the thing is with the box jump, the whole point is to try and be explosive as possible. And I think you can have a huge carryover because when you're trying to be explosive possible, fast twitch, that's what like a single rep max is. It's more fast twitch than anything. You're trying to be explosive. So I don't know if you notice with Olympic lifters who done like snatch, hang clean, all that, they have a crazy box jump. They're just super explosive. It's not more necessarily that they did the box jump to get the explosive squat and hang clean and all that. It's just the fact that they've lifted, like they've done the snatch and the hang clean with really explosive intention, working that the fast twitch fibers, and then because they can lift super heavy weights with that explosive tension, a box squat or a box jump is a lot easier for them. So that's something I learned even through playing with football. Whenever I was working out, I'm trying to get faster, right? So I would always lift weights with a really, really explosive intention. And then, because I'm trying to get faster, work my fastest muscles. And then that carried over to me having a really good box jump. So you have to
Hmm.
think of it that way, I think, not the other way around, not box jump first. So from transitioning to football to powerlifting, I've people always say like you're lifting the weights really fast because I'm trying to be super explosive. That's just kind of like what I've done. But I've noticed powerlifters is more they're trying to be controlled. Like I said, have total body tightness, um, just master the form and everything. So they're not as explosive. Whereas like Olympic lifters, they're trying to be super fast, super explosive. And you see those guys, they have a really good box jump. So I think it's kind of like the other way around. If you're trying to lift if you're lifting the weights really explosive intention, that's going to help more with the box jump. Not, but you could do it either or, as long as you're keeping that explosive intention, trying to move the weight as fast as possible.
Hmm. I guess it's one of those things where it's like if it's working for you, you just keep doing it and like.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so let's move on to the bench. Okay, we got the flat foot, and then you
Hmm.
got the toes on your toes.
Yeah.
From your experience, which style tends to be more beneficial for like which lifter?
It's usually more what you're comfortable to, but I've done both, and I've seen people do better with toes, sorry, heels up, so like not flat footed. You're just going to be able to get more leg drive, bigger push through your feet, and you don't need as much ankle dorsiflexion to have your feet flat on the ground. So when your feet are a bit flatter, it's kind of like hard to get more
Leg
power.
drive.
Yeah, sorry, leg drive, just because usually people have like kind of tight ankles, so it's just it feels really awkward, and they can't get their hips further back under the bench, or sorry, hips further back
Okay.
when they're going. That's the thing. When your feet are flat, it's harder to get your hips back. So it's harder to get leg drive when your feet are really far forward and almost straight, right? So
That's a good point, yeah.
it's almost like I've seen people do like feet up bench. So when your feet up, your legs are perfectly straight. But when your hips are further back, when your feet are under you, it's easier to get leg drive. So when your
Hmm.
feet are flat, you can't. It's almost like it's closer to feet up bench. Whereas when your heels are up, it's not closer to a feet up bench. It's you're having your hips back, so it's easier to get leg drive.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense.
Hmm.
Like, because also your calf can only stretch so much,
Yeah,
and
exactly.
you basically you could go further back when you have them when you're on your toes.
Hmm.
Okay, that
Yeah.
makes sense. Like, and I've seen a lot of lifters too, because I was just curious. I see a lot of lifters who actually do it the way you're advocating, and with somewhat of a close stance too. It almost looks like it's like a duck stance. It's like,
Yeah, yeah. Because when your feet are pointed out, you don't need as much ankle dorsiflexion. So when your feet are pointed out, it's easier to get your feet back, like that duck stance.
hmm. So speaking of leg drive, um, what's your take on the whole leg drive thing? Like you have certain people who are like, you want every single set to look exactly the same, so use leg drive in every set. You know, certain lifters say this. You know, whether you're lifting just the bar or whether you're lifting, you know, four plates, You should always, every rep looks exactly the same. Then you have other lifters who say reserve the leg drive for just the heavier sets. What's your take on that?
I mean, kind of like what I was saying before with total body tightness and using your full body, like these main lifts, squat, bench, deadlift, I find you want to use your whole body as much as possible, and leg drive is really important, and you should always try and use it. I mean, you're just going to be able to lift more weight that way, and you shouldn't really have to save yourself if you want to do your best every single set. So I
Hmm.
think it's always good to use leg drive, but unless you're doing a different exercise like feet up bench, whereas like you're just isolating the
Yeah.
chest, no leg drive. But if you're gonna do bench press, I think it's always trying good to use leg drive, like keep your shoulder blades back, like tight back, just full body movement. Think about bending the bar.
So for you personally, do you use more of a timed leg drive, or is you just have the leg drive during the whole set?
So if you use kind of like a time leg drive, like you see guys bring it down and then they leg drive and kind of hitch it up, there's more of a chance to get your butt off the bench, and reps can be a bit more inconsistent. So for me, since I don't want my butt off the bench because then my lift will get red lighted and it won't count, I try and keep, like, as soon as I unrack the bar, I'm getting that tension right away, pushing through my legs, keeping everything tight, squeezing my glutes. And I'm thinking about the whole lift. And even if I'm doing one rep with the bar, when I'm pushing and doing that, it's exhausting because I'm trying to do my full force through my full body right away.
Hmm.
So like I said, when you're trying to really time it, there's just more of a chance for inconsistency and losing tightness and getting your butt off the bench or feet off the ground, which in competition you can't have.
Hmm. Do you find from your experience that you see most people do like uh, I'm losing my words, the leg drive the whole time?
No, I find most people do kind of the timing thing.
Hmm.
I've noticed that in competition a lot, and I've noticed, I mean, it either works really well with them, they'll get it really fast off their chest, or they won't get it off their chest at all, or their butt's going to come off the bench, and it's just a little bit more inconsistent. And for me, I think for powerlifting, especially, consistency is the most thing. I mean, you're trying to make every single lift and have it really consistent. And I think when you don't have to focus on that, like throughout the lift, like I don't have to focus, okay, I'm going to time it here. You just all your cues are the same, and you can keep everything as consistent as possible. That's what's going to help you win and lift the weight.
Okay. So what's the biggest bar path mistake that you notice on the bench?
I think the biggest bar path is kind of just lifting just a straight bar path, or they're coming down and the bar path is really high, like their shoulders are flared out and it's really close to their upper chest, like their bar path is like that, rather than the bar path literally being at like the top abdominal and pushing back to where it's almost like at your Adam's apple. So I think the best thing to do is kind of when you're unracking it, having it like above, like below that nipple line, bringing it down to there and pressing back so you can activate your shoulders and chest more. And then it's like really towards your upper chest, Adam's apple area.
Hmm.
But yeah, the most common mistake I especially see with beginner lifters is just bringing the bar when they're descending it down, they're bringing it like right above like upper chest, Adam's apple area, and that's really rough on your shoulders, and you're just not going to get as much activation through your triceps. So
Yeah, of course.
yeah, but it's really just bad for your shoulders. I mean, if you're a beginner lifter, if you're more experienced, you can use that as a accessory lift. But
Hmm. So speaking of like shoulder health, I know you see a lot of powerlifters who use this like extremely like it's pretty much like a snatch grip
mhm,
on the bench,
yeah,
and there are a lot of guys who do get away with it, and it works in competition. But what are some tips to really keep your shoulders healthy if you're gonna use such a wide grip?
so as I was kind of saying before, it's better like you can do that when like bring the bar down here when you're more experienced. Same with the wider grip. When you're more experienced, your shoulders are stronger, your chest is stronger. I think you can work your way up to practice at that wider grip, and you shouldn't really start with that wider grip. But generally for shoulder health, I notice a lot of powerlifters, they'll just do bench press and they won't even train shoulders. And I think it's really important to train shoulders, train every single muscle group. Like Mark Bell says it himself, strength is never a weakness. I think that has a lot of meaning to it. You should train every muscle group. And I've seen a lot of powerlifters, experienced powerlifters. They've even said, "Oh, I've been having shoulder problems, all that." And then I see them post later, started working out my shoulders, and now they feel better.
Mm-hmm.
Or if you have imbalances, especially rear delt imbalances or just weak shoulders, those muscles can't keep up with what you're bench pressing. They can't keep up with your chest or triceps. So you're going to get shoulder issues. So I think just generally working on your shoulders, working on the small stabilizers, rear delts, that's really important for shoulder health. And I do that a lot. I've never had shoulder problems.
So you do like band dislocations and
Yeah,
pull aparts and all that stuff?
especially for the warm up. I mean, I don't think you should ever rush a warm up. The warmer your muscles are, the easier it is to contract. So essentially, the warmer your muscles are, if you get a sweat on, it's easier to lift heavier weight. Just like almost in basketball, if you just go up and try and dunk and you're completely cold, you're going to land and it's going to feel awful. Rather than if you're first quarter, second quarter, you see guys, they're flying up, they're dunking. I mean, they feel
Mm-hmm.
great. It's the same thing. You should always try and get a good warm up and work on those small muscles. Warm up using those band dislocations. I saw you posted some stuff with the bands for warm up. That's really good. Those were some really good stuff.
Yeah, yeah. Even for like stuff like bodybuilding, it's
Yeah, no. Anytime you're lifting.
any sport, you know. Okay, so let's talk about the lats on the bench this time. So, when it comes to cues, one cue that actually worked for me, and I think it was actually Carlos who told me it, and I like it a lot. It's to kind of do a pullover out of the when you're
Yeah,
unracking, you kind of do a pullover motion.
yeah, exactly.
But I know there's more to it than that. You see some guys saying, "Oh, you want to kind of roll the bar to your chest." Like, what else is there to it? Like, to
I
really,
So I was going to mention that's the first step. Just unracking the bar is definitely the pullover. Trying like really engage those lats to pull over. Definitely you need that. You want that tightness. And then I like also what you were saying, kind of roll the bar into your chest. So imagine you're doing a barbell row. So when you do a barbell row, you're getting that nice back contraction. The same thing with a bench. I mean, a lot of powerlifters you see, they don't just drop it into their chest because you're not using any muscle to bring it down. So they're rowing the bar, thinking about using their back and rowing it slowly into their chest. And having another cue I like to have is like chest up, like reach for your chest into the bar.
yeah,
Bringing the bar into your chest, reaching for having your chest to reach up into the bar, which is gonna like you can just see I'm keeping everything up and keeping my shoulders back. I think that's another amazing cue. But so the three main cues I like are like what you said: pull over, row the bar into your chest, and chest up, like reaching your bar into the chest. I think that's really important. So if you can use your
yeah.
lats to kind of and your back to descend the bar, you're just going to get a lot more power through that rather than just dropping the bar into your chest.
Of course, and you combine that with like leg drive and like
Yeah,
having
exactly.
muscle on you and all that stuff. But
No, it's a full body movement.
it is.
Yeah.
But what's interesting is that I always see powerlifters doing it, and I actually just started noticing it like in the last few months that like it also helps them reduce the range of motion because they're rowing it, and it's kind of like their chest meets them a part way as
Yeah.
opposed to just rowing it and just just the chest meets them a part of the way, and then they
Yeah.
just yeah
Like yeah, like I was saying, they're trying to reach their chest into the bar.
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're almost done here with the bench. Let's talk head movement.
Hmm.
This is something I was really willing to ask you. It's you always see a lot of benchers who like they have this head, you know what I mean? The head
Yeah.
kind of rises and they
And it
push.
comes up, yeah, off the bench.
What's your thoughts on that? Like, how do you execute it properly? Do you recommend it? All that stuff.
I mean, for IPF rules, which I compete in, your head has to stay on the bench the whole time. So if your head comes off the bench, the lift automatically doesn't count. So that's essentially why I keep it on the bench, but it's also just a lot safer. I mean, you don't really want in any lift, your neck kind of moving around. You want to keep it tight and stable. That's just going to protect your spine and your neck, especially kind of I see with the squat, or actually I see it with the bench more often than not, especially in the NFL Combine. I mean, I played football, so I see the NFL Combine. Guys are benching and their heads just moving around.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just kind of like that's just a waste of energy. You should have your head flat on the bench and just protecting your neck, like coming up or anything.
Well, let's say if you were able to use your head in competition, would you be able to lift a bit heavier?
I don't really know too much about that, but I wouldn't think so. I mean, it's kind of just like a waste of energy. I think you should more focus on keeping
Just keep it on the bench and just
tight, yeah, like lats tight, keeping your chest. It's more of like head up. You kind of want them to be relaxed, especially like when you see guys like tensing up or making really, angry faces. You want that tension not in your face, but in like your chest, your back, your other muscles, right?
Mm-hmm.
One of my trainers always used to say, like, you don't want the tension in the face. Exactly like when you see, if you've ever seen Usain Bolt run when he's sprinting, he just looks completely relaxed. His face is just relaxed. He uses the tension everywhere else in his body, like in his muscles, the ones that are working. So that's kind of like my take on it. That can go with any lift. Just keeping the tension out of the face, out of the head, out of that area.
Okay, let's talk about the slingshot.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if you use this in your training, but I primarily bought mine for bodybuilding purposes, for back offsets on close grip bench, really just to bring up my tries. But
Yeah.
I know it's mainly like a powerlifting tool.
Mm-hmm.
And what do you think are some bigger mistakes that certain powerlifters use with the slingshot, with just the way that they program it?
So I don't actually use the slingshot in my programming like currently within the past year, but I have used it before. The one thing, I think it's great for shoulder health. I mean, if you ever had shoulder problems and you use the slingshot, it's literally your bench is fine after you. It doesn't hurt your shoulders at all. So I think it's great. If I would use it for rehabbing, like coming back to the bench press, I would always put the slingshot on first. And it's also good for getting used to tucking your elbows more, rather than if you're a beginner lifter and having your arms flared out. The slingshot's just going to bring your arms in. So if you're first starting to lift and your first time benching, and you're not even benching 135 yet, you're probably kind of weak in the tricep area and your shoulders are going to be flared out. So I think getting used to having your elbows tucked in, the slingshot's really good for that. And then I've heard bigger lifters, Eric Spoto, stuff like that, when they're trying to overload, they're gonna use the slingshot to overload, get used to the heavier weight. So if you're using a slingshot, you can add like 40 or 50 pounds to your bench, right? So just having a heavier weight in your hands, it's just gonna be more of a confidence builder and getting used to that.
You think it's a tool that could be used year round?
Yeah, probably use all year round. I mean, like I said, I haven't done it before, but I know there are big benchers who use it year round. More of what I've heard and what I've like seen on video, they use it like right after a competition to kind of like give their bodies give their shoulders a break, essentially, or they'll use it closer to a peak just to get that feeling of the weight, that really really heavy weight in their hands.
So let's say you got a lifter who he has this low rep day, like his intensity day, then you have like the volume day, whatever. And on his intensity day, he finishes all his heavy sets of benching. Let's say he does like a 5 through 1, just for example. Right after that, would you recommend he does like one more like quote unquote back off set with like just a slingshot just to feel that heavier weight?
Uh, if you're closer to peaking, yeah, maybe. If you just want to feel out that heavy weight, but I wouldn't really use it that much within the normal training block, because rather than get that extra back offsets with a slingshot, it just kind of makes more sense to me just to get it with
Straight weight.
the normal, straight weight.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, so we're about to finish off with the bench and move on to the last lift. But okay, okay, so we're pretty much done with the bench. So now the last lift. Let's talk about the lats again for the deadlift,
Hmm.
the conventional deadlift. So
Yeah, engaging the lats is extremely important. That's something kind of I learned right away. So the only deadlift I've really missed in competition, it wasn't by strength, it was more of red lights from pitching or something like that. But I noticed right away when I was watching lift, kind of like almost like watching game film, the thing that happened right away when I grabbed the weight, my shoulders rounded, my lats weren't tight. So it just kind of caused me to lean forward, and I had to hitch the weight up just to get it up because I was so far forward. So I think having lats engaged right away, you're not going to lean forward, and you're gonna be tight in the upper back. You're not going to collapse forward, and it's going to be easier. Usually, when they have a soft lockout, it's because their lats are really rounded forward. So from kind of like the knees up, I think having lats tight is really important when you're doing the deadlift.
but as far as cues are concerned, like, are you actively trying to bend the bar, keep it close to you?
Yeah,
Like, what are some?
I thinking bending the bar is a really good cue. Bending it, just you're going to get your shoulders back, and also kind of like hiding your armpits is another good cue. Almost, those are the only ones I really use. I don't try and get tons and tons of cues. I like to just kind of like keep it simple or get what works for the lifter.
Mhm.
But in general, yeah, just trying to keep your lats tight is really important.
Okay. Okay, so for let's say if someone's a conventional puller, how
Mhm.
much merit do you think the sumo has in the program?
Um, I haven't really done sumo a lot, but I've noticed with a lot of big sumo lifters, it's actually the opposite way. They'll almost train conventional all the way up until 2 or 3 weeks competition, but I haven't really seen lifters do sumo and then kind of switch to conventional because conventional it works the erectors a lot more than the quads. So you're
Hmm.
getting a really strong lower back, but it also works obviously like glutes, quads too. So yeah, I wouldn't if and whereas sumo you're really upright and it doesn't hit your erectors that much. So if you go to sumo where it doesn't work your lower back as much and then you try and transfer back to conventional, it's kind of like conventional is more of a lower back dominant lift, so it won't transfer that well. But I think other way around is a lot better. Going from working on your conventional and then switching to sumo, you probably can have a fairly big sumo pull. I know a lifter, Caleb Wollum or Doctor Deadlift. He does conventional basically 80% of the time, but he pulls sumo in a competition. But he basically says that's conventional all the time. It works more muscles, it works your lower back more, and it's just gonna transfer for a stronger sumo pull.
Hmm. Also, it doesn't aggravate the groin area as much. No?
Yeah, yeah, your adductors. So if you can, what he basically said, he keeps his sumo form intact. So what Doctor Deadlift or Caleb Williams says, he keeps like good sumo form. Does it not super heavy, but just keep the form intact, work the adductors, and then focus more on conventional to build that strength.
And then a couple weeks before the meet, it just switches over.
Yeah, exactly. And then I know he just says when he switches over, his sumo just feels like unbelievable
Hmm. That's smart. Yeah.
because he has the form down packed, and his lower back and his legs are stronger just from doing conventional.
Okay, let's talk about. I know there's one lifter who I saw who was talking about when you grab the deadlift bar, he has
Mm-hmm.
it on his lower palms
Mm-hmm.
as opposed to the higher palms. And I'm assuming that he does this to reduce range of motion, so he could be more upright. Because if he
Mm-hmm.
has it too high up the palm, he's gonna be a bit more bent over. And do you personally do this, or do you just grab it like high up the palm?
I grab it like high off the palm, kind of like right where the calluses would be. I think your whole hand can just get under the bar. You're gonna get a better grip that way. I haven't really focused too much on hand placement, but that's just how I've been doing it, and I feel like it works for me. But I have noticed lifters who try and, like you said, decrease that range of motion where they can,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
hold it from here to here. It does decrease the range of motion slightly. It's almost like when you wear straps, it'll naturally um, roll close to your palm and decrease the range of motion. That's why I notice some lifters say when you lift with straps, or if you're doing a deadlift with straps, it's an accessory movement. It's not like an actual like deadlift, just because it decreases the range of motion. But
Hmm.
the problem with that is really there's just a chance it'll slip out of your hands. So
Exactly. So that's the trade-off. It's
yeah, it's kind of like a trade-off. So if you have really strong grip and you can do it that way and you can hold it in competition, that's good. I mean, you're decreasing the range of motion and you can hold on to it. But I mean, I see a lot of people with, they can't hold on to it, so the lift won't count. So it's a trade-off. You have to know yourself, I guess.
Mhm.
If you can grip the bar and do that where it's close to your palms, like lower palm, then you should do it that way. Decrease the range of motion, it'll be easier. But if you can't grip it, obviously don't do it.
Mhm. Yeah, of course. Okay, what are some lifts that help you pull the most? You credit them a lot to, and you know that like, hey, if these key lifts go up, your pull's most likely gonna improve.
One of the main accessory movements I like is a glute ham raise or a Nordic hamstring curl.
Hmm.
I don't know if you had it, or actually what you posted, which I found was really funny. So I used to do snatch grip deadlifts a lot, and I feel that helps a lot getting used to upper body, like total like upper body trap lat tightness. You're gonna get used to that.
Hmm.
So the snatch grip kind of rack pulls. I usually do snatch grip rack pulls and like I said, Nordic hamstring curls. I find those help a ton. So the snatch grip rack pull, like I said, it's going to help with more upper body lat tightness. Helps with that. I'm gonna get engage the glutes and lower back more. And whereas like Nordic hamstring curl, I find helps a ton with the hamstrings. So in the deadlift, it works your hamstrings, but not kind of like directly, more as a secondary. So I feel like I have to compensate and find a lift that's going to help, find an exercise that's going to help more focus on the hamstrings. I think that's like a key one right there.
Hmm. And for upper body, like,
Hmm.
how heavy do you go on your rows? Because I noticed a lot. There are certain powerlifters who they don't baby their rows, but they don't go like super like they don't go balls to the wall. Like they'll like how heavy are you going on like your
Yeah,
barbell rows, your dumbbell rows if you happen to do those lifts.
oh, I go pretty heavy on those. I think those are really important. It's definitely going to help with engaging your lats. So at my gym, we actually have up to a 300-pound dumbbell for single arm rows.
Hmm.
I can row the 220 like single arm dumbbell quite a few times, and then barbell I usually row a bit over 315. And I find whenever I get stronger in those, my deadlift goes up. I've
Hmm.
just noticed that if I'm getting really strong in those, I just feel my next week my deadlift just feels way better.
Yeah,
So
it makes sense,
I think that's really important, and I see a lot of people, especially powerlifters, they kind of just go through the motions on that lift. They just don't think it's important. But kind of like going back to like what Mark Bell said, like strength is never a weakness. No matter what, if you're going to get stronger, your upper back, your traps, it's going to help with the deadlift. It's not going to hinder it at all. Being super strong in the upper back is not going to like lessen your deadlift. I guess you could say it's only going to help it.
No, of course. I find rows are super essential. Like, and if you could
Yeah,
barbell row like 4 or 5, if you could pick up 4 or 5 off the floor and you could just barbell row it like somewhat decent form.
yeah,
Imagine how much easier it is to like pick a weight up off the floor and deadlift it. You don't have to bend your elbows or anything. It's like a smooth pull.
yeah. No, exactly. So yeah, funny about that. I have a friend. He doesn't really deadlift that much. I mean, he'll do it kind of like speed deadlifts, kind of like West Side. So he'll deadlift like 4 or 5, like 3 times as fast as he can and do sets of that. but he would always just focus on accessories like barbell row, single arm row, and he can row a 300-pound dumbbell 8 times. So one day we just kind of tested his max on deadlift. So like I said, he doesn't go over 405, but he just wanted to test his 1 rep max, and he hit 735.
735.
Yeah, beltless too. And he like never deadlifts over 405. He just wanted to test his 1 rep max. So, and his upper back is just like, it's just massive. And he could row 300 pounds in his hand. So when he picks up, when he has like 735, it's almost like a bit over 300 in each hand on each side. It doesn't feel like super heavy to him. So.
Well, he must be going like extremely like fast on those 405s then.
Oh yeah, no,
It must be like, yeah.
It flies up. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah.
But his upper back is just like massive. I mean, the guy can pick up 300 pounds in one hand and toss it around. So
When you do your rows, you make it touch like a penley, or are you more like you do both, or?
no, I think bodybuilders should more focus on isolation, but when powerlifters kind of like more of a penley, more of like a full body movement, because that's what a deadlift is. It's more of a full body movement. So I kind of, it's almost like a cheater row. Like I'll get some leg drive in there, push off my legs, and kind of like almost get a little bit.
But you'll reset on each rep basically.
Pardon?
You'll reset it on every rep basically, like on the floor.
Yeah. It won't be like really ugly form, but it's like, it's not crazy isolation. Nice slow contraction, only using your lat.
Of course, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, speaking of beltless. Like, what's your take on the whole beltless versus belt thing? Like, do you ever have phases where you use the belt a bit less, or are you pretty much just using it at the same amount of time all year long?
So since I've been competing, I've done competitions kind of back to back to back. So I've used the belt the whole time for this past year. But other than that, like when I was playing football the past like 10, 11 years, I never even touched a belt. But I think not using a belt in the beginning is really important, and just building that core strength rather than like sometimes I'll see guys. I mean, powerlifting is really, it's a growing sport, so a lot of people are getting into it. They're strapping up with a belt already at like 135. I think.
Yeah, it's terrible. Yeah.
Unnecessary, and like when you're first really starting, like when you're working out, like maybe 3 or 4 years down, you shouldn't use a belt at all, and you should really try and engage your core, get used to the movement, just get strong in all areas.
Mm-hmm.
So, but as you're lifting heavier, if you're competitive, lifting some pretty heavy weight over 400 pounds, I think if you just want to lift more and win, a belt's going to help you lift more. So.
Of course.
Yeah.
The funny thing with the belt is that some people think that they could just throw it on and they're just gonna like reap all the benefits and lift heavier, and they will most likely lift heavier. But what's your best advice on how to really maximize the use of the belt?
Yeah, so like you were saying, a lot of people, they put on a belt and they think their lifts are just going to magically go up, but you have to really know how to use a belt. So that kind of comes back to the bracing, what I was talking about before, when guys collapse forward. So you want to think about breathing through the diaphragm, not through your chest. So when you're breathing through your chest, so I'm going to take a belly back here, my chest is coming up. You don't want that. So when you're bracing, you want to breathe through your diaphragm, so it's almost like you're not really pushing out your stomach, but breathing, and you're getting a breath like 360 degrees. You'll feel, I'm taking a breath through my diaphragm. Like I feel like my lower back expanding, my abs sticking up more, and then I'm gonna flex, keep that all tight. So it's almost like I'm getting that breath relaxing, big breath relaxing, and then it's gonna push against the belt and then tight. So really, once you're getting that three-dimensional, 360-degree breath, it's all your whole core is gonna be pushing against that belt. And when you're squatting or deadlifting, or even if you wear a belt benching, it's just everything's gonna push against that belt, and it's gonna help with that spring action to lift. So a lot of people, they just throw on a belt and they don't know proper bracing. So, I mean, they're not pushing against the belt, so it's not really going to do much.
Mm-hmm.
But if you really focus on that bracing, which I think you learn before you even put on a belt, that's going to help a ton.
So you're saying that like some lifters, when they're they're trying to brace, they'll bring their chest up
Yeah, like they're breathing like this,
through their chest. Yeah.
like breathing through your chest rather than breathing through a diaphragm, getting they call it belly breath, like pushing my stomach out.
Hmm. Okay, so what's your take on this? Isn't deadlifter related, but what's your take on the whole knee and elbow sleeves? Like, do you think like you have to be at a certain level to start using them? Like, you think like we're talking about the novice who's doing 135. You
Hmm.
think they should start using? You know what I mean? Like, when is it really quote unquote appropriate for someone to like start using elbow sleeves or like start using knee sleeves? I know it's like a funny question, but
I think knee sleeves are great if you're not an athlete. If you're an athlete, you should never wear knee sleeves or elbow sleeves just because you're never going to have that on the field, on the court, wherever. But if you're, I mean, just generally lifting, I think knee sleeves really help a lot for knee pain or knee health. So you could almost even just start right away with knee sleeves because it's going to help that compression, get blood flow in there. So it's going to help a lot. I haven't actually worn elbow sleeves before, so I don't know much about that, but I would assume it does the similar effects as knee sleeves, right? So getting that more blood flow, getting that compression, but it's hit or miss because you also want to get your joints stronger, right?
hmm.
But I mean, I find so I used to have knee pain when I was playing football squatting. Ever since I've worn knee sleeves, I've literally my knees are fine. I've never had knee pain at all, even though I'm squatting way more than I used to, deadlifting more. Um, but yeah, it's kind of a tricky question. But I would say,
Yeah.
I mean, I never started wearing knee sleeves till powerlifting. But yeah, it's hit or miss. It's almost like with the belt thing. You kind of you want to get your joints stronger, and then once you're going really heavy, maybe wear the elbow and knee sleeves. Once you're having joint pain, essentially, where you're feeling tendonitis, it can help with that a bit.
So for you, you'll throw on the knee sleeves like what? I guess after like 70%, or do you just throw them on from the
So
start?
yeah, I throw them on right away just for more blood flow compression. Like even if my knees feel a little bit achy that day, I'll warm up with my knee sleeves and they feel great after. And I'll do my sets and they'll feel really good after.
Hmm.
Just more blood flow in general. It's kind of coming back to the warm up when we were talking about more blood flow is going to help with muscle contractions, get things warm. You don't want to be stiff, so knee sleeves help with that too.
Okay. So got the last question of the day,
Mm-hmm.
then we'll wrap it up. So, What's the biggest mistake that lifters make on their first meet?
Deadlifters?
What? No, no, no. In general, like,
Oh, like lifters.
yeah.
Sorry.
What? Yeah, yeah. What's the biggest mistake that lifters tend to make on their first meet?
Definitely, especially I saw it at Worlds, is just going too heavy for competition, like doing something, opening way too heavy. I think I see a lot of guys, like one guy that was close to me at Worlds, he was ahead of me up until deadlifts, and then his opening deadlifts, like what should be, you want to get a number on the board, he just didn't even hit his opening deadlift. Like, I mean, he couldn't get it, so he automatically disqualified. So I think, especially since squat's the first lift in powerlifting, it's super important. You want to get your first squat. That's just a huge confidence builder. I mean, I find
Yeah.
squats is the most frightening too. And just getting all three squats, especially your opener, it's just going to carry huge momentum for the whole meet. I mean,
Hmm.
I've never missed a squat in competition, and I'll always open light just to get that confidence in. And since I've never missed a squat, I've never actually missed a lift by strength, and I've always done well in competition. And I've seen people like just see it through their body language. If they miss a squat, it's kind of like the meet's done for them. They just don't really bounce back. I mean, some people can back if they're really mentally strong, but a lot of people are just it's gonna crush them, crush their day. So I think it's really important to open light, to
So,
open
yeah.
like a number you can do for 3 to 4 reps on any given day. Because
See,
really, it's your third attempt for competition that matters the most. Like, just get a number on the board, build that confidence, get momentum.
So you think, roughly speaking, like your opener should be something that you could triple, and your
Yeah.
second should be something that you could double, and then third is something you could single, or like as a
Yeah.
rough guideline.
Yeah, generally speaking. If I think about the numbers I did, I mean, I could definitely triple, probably get four with my openers, depending on the lift. Um, and then my second attempts were more of they were numbers I can double,
Hmm.
or get a single, but it would be a fairly easy single, not necessarily double. Maybe a double, so like RP 9.5 we call. But like all the first essentially two attempts, I'm confident I can hit. I've hit before many times, not once. I think that's another common mistake people make. They're like, okay, I've hit this lift before, but it's like kind of like, but how many times have you hit it? Have you hit it once in your life, or have you hit it many times? So my first
Hmm.
two attempts, it's lifts I've hit many times, not just once, because that one time could be like a really, really, really good day,
It could be
right?
fluke.
Yeah, it could be fluke almost.
Hmm.
And then third attempts, it's more of you want to judge that third attempt based off how your second attempt moved.
Hmm.
Not have like a preset number, like I want to squat 500 pounds, but your second attempt was 450 and you're just taking some huge jump.
Hmm.
Basically, that's how all my attempts go. And I've never missed the lift off strength. I've missed lifts off like faulty, getting too red lights, but I've never missed lift off strength. And building the highest total in powerlifting is what gets you W's, what gets you to win. So
Hmm.
there was a stat I've seen at IPF Worlds that it was like 78% of winners in powerlifting go 9 for 9.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so it's all about building that total.
Well, it just goes to show how a lot of the top lifters they leave a bit in the tank, you know?
Yeah, no, exactly. I mean, like I left a little bit in the tank on my list, but I mean, it got me like a silver medal at my first Worlds, and I've always left a little bit in the tank on other lifts, and I've won first in 3 out of 5 competitions and second in two the other two.
Hmm. Like I got a lot of good like powerlifters on my social, like whenever I scroll through my
Hmm.
social media and stuff like that, and I noticed like the really like high caliber powerlifters. I'm watching their highlights, and a lot of them look like they could have done so much more.
Yeah,
But like they're leaving a lot in the tank, and I guess that's what keeps them like going up the ranks so much because
yeah.
they're
You
not
just
they're not burning themselves out, you know.
yeah, especially another important thing where you mentioned like what rookie kind of lifters mistake or a mistake in competition is they'll burn themselves out on one lift, so they'll go all out on one lift, like just absolute grinder, and that's just kind of like I saw there was a guy who did that on squat, and